What's your worst "this is not happening to me" moment? It was a hot July afternoon in 2017. I was getting ready to jump in the shower to go work for a few hours when I heard a knock on the door. I had a pair of gym shorts on, so I went and answered it, and to my amazement there were a bunch of cops outside. They told me they had had a complaint of loud noise and possibly domestic violence. I just laughed and said no, that's not here, as I live alone, and they said well, that's okay. One of them asked me if I had any ID on me so they could go about their business, and I said sure. My wallet was on the wall right by the door, and so I pulled my ID out and handed it to one of the officers. He looked at it and asked me if I could step outside. Again I kind of chuckled and said yeah, no problem. As soon as I stepped out of the door of my house, the other officer said turn around, put your hands behind your back. I looked at him kind of funny and I said what for? He said turn around. So I turned around. I put my hands behind my back. Suddenly I felt handcuffs. As they set me down in front of the house, I asked one of the other officers what this was all about. He said there's a warrant out for my arrest. Now mind you, I have never been in any kind of trouble at all in my life, and so again I kind of chuckled. I said what kind of warrant? The officer said he don't know, as it's from out of state. Now I'm starting to get a little freaked out. So the officer leads me into the police car. All I have is my gym shorts and flip-flops and my cell phone. That of course was taken from me. As we're driving to the holding cell about 45 minutes later, I asked the officer what this is all about. He said he really doesn't know. It's an out-of-state warrant and they have to take me to jail. And it looks like there's a no bond clause on this warrant, which means until I figure out what this is I'm stuck there. I was put into a holding cell with about 15 gang members in Fort Lauderdale Broward County Jail. About 11 that night, I was transferred to a holding jail, given a 2-inch mattress and a blanket, and told to go to sleep on the floor. At this point I've asked probably 4 or 5 officers what's going on and nobody seems to know. I haven't seen an attorney and I don't have any telephone numbers memorized. Stupid smartphones. So the next day I ask an officer again what's going on and how do I find out. He comes back and simply says it's an out-of-state warrant. You'll have to wait to see the judge. I said I want to access my cell phone so I can find some numbers and call somebody. At that point they told me they won't let me unless there's a court order. Here's where it gets really bad, as if it wasn't bad enough already. I don't see a judge for 8 days. Yep, you read that right. I'm 8 days in jail, not having any idea why, not seeing an attorney and having no access to call anyone. I finally see a judge on the 8th day and he tells me it's an out-of-state warrant, and again he doesn't know what it's for, and I have a choice. I can fight extradition or I can concede to extradition. If I fight I'm going to probably be there for 60 days minimum and possibly be let out. If I concede I could be there another 45 days before they take me to the other state. So I conceded and I asked him for the court order to access my phone. The judge says he's never heard of having to have a court order to access a cell phone but reluctantly gives one. On the 9th day as I ask to again access my phone, I'm told that they're not going to allow me to access my phone even though they have a court order because the phone battery is dead. Now I don't know what to do. This is the 9th day and it turns into the 10th and 11th and 12th, and so on. On the 23rd day, no one in the world knows where I am. I'm assuming my kids probably think I'm dead, as they live in another state. North Carolina shows up to extradite me on the 23rd day, during this 48-hour trip where I'm shackled hand and foot in the back of a van. I finally convinced one of the officers that is driving to access their Facebook account and message a friend of mine to try to get a phone number. They do that and of course my friend thinks it's a scam. Finally I gave him information that only I would know and I get a phone number. On the 25th day in North Carolina I finally found out what the charge is. Former client of mine from 4 years prior in a business that I had at the time, and signed over to another partner, has accused me of taking $20,000 and fleeing the state. I laughed again. But not real hard this time because this was getting real. As I'm booked into their jail I'm trying to figure out what to do. The next day I finally saw an attorney. He doesn't have too much information for me but tells me what the charge entails and what the possibilities are for sentencing and things like that. A few days later he comes back with what they call discovery, which is evidence on me from the district attorney side. As we went through that I found no evidence at all pointing any kind of criminal activity to me, which of course I knew because I hadn't done anything. However, I did find a receipt from an unknown company that was in my former partner's handwriting and had his home address as the address for the unknown company. The amount receipted was $12,000. I told my attorney what I found and then was escorted back to my cell. Days and weeks go by. No news at all. The total amount of time I spent in this jail was 52 days, maybe more. They demanded $25,000 in cash in order to release me, or I was just stuck there. I had access to no money at all. However, I had finally called my buddy who had gotten in touch with my sister and they had let my kids know what was going on. At least they knew I was alive. On about the 54th day I had woken up with some pain. Looks like I had caught an infection and it was near the groin area. Painful as you can imagine. Had no way to contact a nurse except to put it on a message board requesting medical. There was no medical that day, there was no medical the next day, even though I requested it again. 6 days later I finally had seen a nurse after I told them through the message that it has gone into my ear. She gave me one antibiotic pill that day and told me I would get another the next day. On the 61st day I saw my attorney and my attorney had told me at this point that the DA is not going to offer a plea bargain because the evidence against you doesn't make sense. However, there is a possibility that there will be a plea bargain offer, but it probably won't be for about 6 months. If at that point I plead not guilty, it may be another 6 months to a year before there is a trial. At this point I just tell my attorney that we need to speak to the DA. He says he doesn't have time to do that, and I said no problem. Give me the name of the DA and the telephone number and I'll have my sister set up a three-way call between us. Something amazing happened at that point. The next morning my attorney arrived and told me I was getting out that day. The state released me on my signature with no money involved. So I left North Carolina on a Thursday evening and had to take a train back to South Florida. I got home Friday night. Fortunately through this time I've spoken to my landlady. Even though I had been evicted because she didn't know where I was, she let me stay. My car had been repoed, the companies that I have done business with had cancelled contracts, and one had even charged me back almost $75,000, but at least I had a place to stay. So I began to regroup the next afternoon and I noticed that my eye's hurting. By that night I couldn't see from my right eye and it was in so much pain that I had to call an ambulance. Long story short, I ended up staying the night in the hospital with an infection that had gone into my eye behind my eye and was in the process of getting ready to attack my brain. I lost sight in my right eye that day, ended up several months later having to have a cornea transplant. The transplant was a year and a half ago, and I still can't see very well out of the eye. Today is July 22nd, almost 2 years from the arrest and the case still hasn't been closed. I've been told over and over that they're going to dismiss the charges but they haven't done that as of yet. The US justice system is broken. My story is proof of that.
Teachers of Reddit, what is the smartest, most creative way of cheating that you've seen? In a lot of my college courses I wasn't allowed to use anything higher than a TI-84. So I took the guts of my TI-89 and swapped it into my TI-84. Never got caught. Not sure if this would work anymore, but if I had a paper to write on a book I didn't read I would find a well-written paper online. Then translate the entire thing from English to German, German to French, French to Spanish, then Spanish back to English. Pull the original paper and the new one up side by side, and clean up the grammar on the new paper, and you've got the same concept, but written just different enough to not be plagiarism. Worked like a charm. I remember a story from my OCHM professor. This student all semester who wasn't showing up to class kept getting his score improved significantly after regrades. They got their tests back, had a day to review them, and were allowed to resubmit for a regrade. They knew he was cheating, because of the unlikelihood of the grading mistakes on multiple exams, but the TAs who graded it couldn't confidently say it wasn't their handwriting. Ultimately it was an office worker for the department who figured it out near the end of the semester. His staples were angled different than the exams handed out that were mass stapled. He was recreating the test, printing it, re-answering it, and then grading it in the same pen as the TAs, and had done a good job copying the writing style.
What is the cutest mistake you've ever seen someone make? My boyfriend had a brain injury 4 months ago. He was in a coma for about a week and when he woke he had to relearn how to speak coherently all over again. The speech therapist had a session with me present so that I could practice these lessons with him at home. He, the therapist, would say a word and my boyfriend would have to give him a synonym or definition. The therapist said, happiness, and my boyfriend pointed to me and said my name. I did a weird mixture of crying, laughing, and the therapist told him, no, that's incorrect, and my boyfriend pouted and frowned and didn't quite understand his mistake. It's a memory I think of a lot when we're going through a particularly rough patch.
My husband is upset that I gave him permission to sleep with my best friend. So about 4 months ago, my husband and my best friend of over 10 years sat me down and told me that they were very attracted to each other. My best friend is very beautiful and she is single, and to be honest she has more in common with my husband than I do. Both are positive and energetic with a great sense of humor. That's why I love them. But more than getting along and being cordial to one another, I have never seen them being flirtatious to one another, and they always treated each other with respect, so hearing what they had to say shocked me to my core. My husband insisted that he loved me and that it was nothing more than physical attraction. They didn't want to do anything behind my back, so they were basically asking for permission to sleep together. I think that they truly believe that if they told me it wouldn't be considered cheating and it would be easier on their conscience, I guess. I was shocked as I mentioned and started crying, and my best friend got very worried and started apologizing and crying too, telling me how she would never do anything that I didn't agree on or that would jeopardize our friendship, and she left quickly afterwards after apologizing a million times, texted me apologies all night too. I just packed my bags and went to live with my father and his family with my 2 babies. It became very clear to me very soon that I acted very rash and only on my emotions, and my father didn't really show any interest in housing me for a longer period. I started regretting leaving. My husband was calling me every day telling me that he loved me and that he would never do anything behind my back or cheat on me when I asked him if they had an affair. Anyway, after 3 weeks at my father's I started discussing my husband's wish with him and I finally agreed. He was very glad and he reassured me that it was just physical and that both he and my best friend weren't interested in anything else, but to be honest, by then I didn't even care, I just wanted to go home. I thought that neither my husband nor my best friend were worth me destroying my children's chance to a whole and safe home, being a child of divorce myself. My best friend called me to make sure that my husband was telling her the truth. I want to hear it from you. Are you sure? Are you 100% sure? I said yes. All I know is that they have slept together. I didn't want any details. I don't know the when, I guess it was right after I moved back home if they weren't already sleeping together. I don't know the where, probably at her place since she lives alone, and I don't know the how often or if they still are doing it. At first my husband was cheerful, but after a while he started getting depressed. He complained that I have changed and that he missed me, and he wanted to discuss things with me, but I wasn't interested. I told him that I was giving him an unlimited pass if it meant he never talked to me about this again, but it made him more depressed. Now he started flat out blaming me for the change in our relationship. He said that I tricked him. I could have said no because then he would not have done it if it was to affect our relationship, but instead I ran away and now I'm changed. He also said that I have cut contact with my friend even after I gave her the green light. If she knew the price was me never wanting to talk to her again, she would never have done it, so now she thinks I ruined our friendship that she cherished more than anything. I have tricked them. I have tricked him, and now I haven't even looked him in the face in 4 months. I asked him what he wanted from me now, because I truly believe that I've done all in my power to please him. Divorce? Maybe just separation? I suggested that he should see someone regarding of his depressed state of mind, but he just shook his head, told me that I didn't get it. I don't know what I'm supposed to get. I did what he wanted and I have accepted this, and our current life is my lemonade. My babies have a stable home and I am well cared for. I want to help my husband, yes, but not to the extent that it would affect me or my children. Any advice? Please, nothing about divorce because I don't want that, and neither does my husband. Edit. Okay, everyone is telling me that this is fake and I'm a troll. I'm sorry to have bothered you. I really thought people were more helpful. I will not bother you. What is the most disgusting thing you have ever done that you took pleasure in? My wife and I had 2 wonderful daughters, 13 and 10, and a pretty healthy relationship. At some point things started to appear off. She got very clingy to her phone all of a sudden, made sure to delete the saved password feature on our common PC, stated having phone calls that suddenly ended when I came into the room. You can probably guess what it was. Now, having 15 years of marriage behind us, I was hoping it wasn't what it obviously seemed to be. So one day when she told me she was going to spend some time with the girls, I decided to follow her. Sure enough, I find her driving to a hotel to meet with a guy I will call Steve. To say it was a gut punch was an understatement. I literally cried for an hour straight. After I was done with my self-wallowing phase, I decided the best course was getting even. I thought of several scenarios that may or may not have involved me hurting Steve. Eventually I decided to do things more civilly and more importantly legally, but only just. So the first part of the plan was gathering evidence. I could have just gotten a pie, but I had something better in mind. So one day when my wife was at her job and the kids at school, I installed some small secret cameras and microphones I had bought. Due to the setup of our bedroom, I even managed to get one perfectly overlooking the bed. I didn't however use them while I was at home. So a couple of days pass, when I proposed to my wife that the second to next weekend I should take the girls on a trip and stay a night too. I more often than not was the one cooking. I took a far more active role in raising the girls and showed them a lot more patience and attention. She was usually busy working or drinking, so me going alone with the girls on a trip wasn't that weird. So 2 weeks pass, in which time I get my affairs in order and contact a lawyer to write up a separation agreement that would involve me keeping residents in custody. I go on the trip, try to not give anything away to the girls and wait and see if Steve and my wife fall into the trap. When I returned I checked the recordings of the weekend, and sure enough it's a 36-hour fest. When they weren't doing the deed, the dialogue was something even better. I found out that Steve had a wife, but even worse, they also talked about me. And I heard the obvious character assassination that I expected about how small my PP was, an insecurity of mine, how I didn't satisfy her, but there was some really hurtful stuff, like her telling Steve some of my deepest secrets and shameful stories that I had only told her about, just so they could have a laugh. She even told him about my dope story and how I attempted to take my life when I was 16. So at this point I didn't have any doubts on what to do. The next day when the kids left, but before my wife left, I confronted her with the video and told her that either she signs the separation agreement and leaves the house, or the girls are going to receive an in-depth explanation of all the positions in which mommy cheated on daddy. I wasn't going to do that. Just to be clear, I love my daughters too much, but I put the threat there and she was too emotional to realize my bluff. She went through all the stages, denying everything, trying to bargain, threatening me, and getting angry. I let it go through all that stuff. Eventually she signed the paper and she departed that very evening after she told her goodbyes to the girls. I didn't show or tell the girls anything graphic. I was always very honest with them, which is another reason why I was always the favorite parent, so I just said that mommy had been unfaithful. The younger took some time figuring it out, but that was made up by my older getting mightily upset. She had just gotten her first boyfriend, as I'm not sure the term really applies at that age, but she knew enough of the world to get mad big time. This would be important at a would-be custody battle, as though she did for the moment agree to give over custody. I feared, and I was right to fear, that she would try and fight me for the kids. What I didn't expect was for her to use her visitation rights to talk crap about me. Basically she started telling my younger kid about how it was all my fault for not forgiving her. Her lawyer even started demanding she receive custody. So I finally activated my revenge plan. Enter trip to South Carolina. Why South Carolina? Simple. Fort Sumter. I really wanted my daughters to see it. I definitely did not go there because it is one of the last places where revenge porn isn't illegal, and where I could upload my wife and Steve's doings and intimate moments with no worries on the internet and other such sites, as you cannot be prosecuted for crimes that weren't illegal when and where they were committed. I especially made sure to include the clip where Steve could not get it up. I sent the links to my wife's employer, her clients, and everybody in her line of work just to be sure, to Steve's wife and to his firm. Steve soon got a divorce. I feel sorry for his wife as she was an innocent victim in all of this, but I think it's better that she found out. As for my wife, this was the end of any chance to get custody. She soon got fired from her job of 8 years. I got custody. Yes, due to her being unemployed, I got no alimony, but honestly I make enough money to sustain both me and the girls, so I don't care, and I'm good enough at caring for them and they are old enough to allow me to have a full-time job. Several months later, my wife is still unemployed. Last time I spoke to her wife, she threatened to come and take my life and how this will be revenge for ruining hers. What's the best joke you have ever heard? Peter goes into a pharmacy and says to the pharmacist, "Hello, could you give me a rubber? I'm going to my girlfriend's place for dinner and I think I might have a chance." The pharmacist gives him the rubber, and as Peter was going out he returns and says, "Give me another rubber because my girlfriend's sister is very cute too. She always crosses her legs in a provocative manner when she sees me and I think I might strike a luck there too." The pharmacist gives him a second rubber, and as Peter was leaving again, he turns back and says, "Give me one more rubber because my girlfriend's mom is still pretty cute and when she sees me she always makes eye contact, and since she invited me for dinner I think she is expecting me to make a move." During dinner, Peter sat with his girlfriend on the left, the sister on his right and the mom facing him. When the dad walks in, Peter lowers his head and starts the dinner prayer. "Dear Lord, bless this dinner and thank you for all you've given us." 10 minutes later, Peter was still praying, "Thank you Lord for your kindness." 10 more minutes go by, and Peter is still praying, keeping his head down, very close to the table. They all looked at each other surprised, and his girlfriend was even more surprised than others. She got close to him and whispered, "I didn't know you were so religious." Peter, with his head still on the table, replies, "I never knew your dad was a pharmacist." "What's the creepiest thing you've ever done?" "Well, here goes. This is the kind of dark and depraved crap that will make the rest of you ashamed to be human beings with me. My sister, who is 1 year younger than me, had this really hot friend who I always had a crush on but who was never interested in me. Well, one day my sister asked me to fix her laptop, and I found a video of the two of them doing some lesbian fooling around. Neither of them was gay to my knowledge, so I was blown away. I saved a copy of the video to my thumb drive and wanked to it furiously for weeks. I eventually came to terms with the fact that it wasn't just the friend getting me off, it was the fact that she was with my sister. I would start doing creepy shit like sneaking into her room while she was sleeping and touching her and licking her leg as high up her thigh I could. About a year and a half after I found the video, my sister was killed in a car accident. Her friend came to the funeral, of course, and while she was kneeling alone over the casket saying her goodbyes, I wondered if she was thinking of what her and my sister used to do with each other, and I got a hard-on right there at the viewing. I got home and loaded up the video again and had another wank and then cried. What is the most tragic secret a lover has revealed to you? I started texting a beautiful woman. I knew she was out of my league. I'm a 50-year-old overweight and out-of-shape Caucasian guy. She was a 30-year-old elegant, college-educated, and stunningly beautiful black woman. Nonetheless, after a few days of texting, I invited her to join me for dinner at a very nice restaurant downtown. To my dismay, she actually accepted my invitation. I was waiting for her at the bar, and when she walked in, my jaw hit the floor. She was so beautiful I literally lost my breath for a moment. She was taller than me in her heels and was wearing a beautiful short dress with the most amazing legs I'd ever seen. She greeted me with a bright smile and a gentle hug, and we were escorted to our table. We had a very good date, the conversation flowed, and she seemed to have a good time as well. We decided to continue the date and went to a couple of bars for drinks. Finally, she said it was time to go home, and, since she had taken Uber earlier, I offered to give her a ride home. She quickly agreed. All this time, I thought that even though the date was fun and comfortable, it would lead to a friendship at best considering the obvious differences between us. Well, when we got to her place, we talked for a few minutes more. I offered to walk her to her door but she declined. She then got out and walked around to my side of the car. She leaned through the window and planted a very brief but intimate kiss on my lips. My heart stopped. She then leaned back and smiled. I was able to stammer out an invitation to go out again and she accepted without hesitation. I was on cloud 9. I knew that this remarkable woman would have a profound effect on my life. It seemed predestined. For the next couple of weeks, she and I were seeing each other nearly every day and I was developing strong feelings already. But, something was wrong. I had a weird nagging sense that she was hiding something. Although she was being very affectionate, something just felt off. Then, finally it happened. We were out at a bar together. It was a good time but she seemed distracted. As we were leaving she turned to me and said, in a serious tone, "We need to talk." I thought, this is it, the differences between us are too much for her and I'm about to be friend-zoned. But nothing prepared me for what came next. She asked me to just listen and not say anything. I agreed. She then started out by saying that she had developed strong feelings for me but there was something that I needed to know about her that might make me want to change my mind about pursuing a relationship. My mind was spinning and so many scenarios raced through my head. Is she married? Is she a criminal? Then I remembered a few days earlier when we were making out. I had touched her chest lightly and realized that she had implants. She looked at me, and with a tear in her eye, she told me that she has stage 4 breast cancer. She was originally diagnosed 4 years earlier with stage 3 and had beaten it. Now, it had returned to stage 4 and she was to start chemo again in 2 weeks. I was floored. She then stated that she would understand if I wanted to turn and run and she wouldn't think less of me for it. I reiterated that I adored her, thought she was an amazing woman, and if she wanted me to take this journey with her, I would be honored to do so. We kissed and just held each other for a while. Finally, she said goodnight and went to her car to go home. I cried all the way home. We had a full amazing year together. I had to go to Japan for work and she met me there in between chemo treatments. She never cried and was always elegant. I learned what the true definition of grace meant. We lived a lifetime in 2014. On February 12, 2015, she passed away. What memory from your childhood makes you think, wow, we were poor? I think the time that I realized we were poor was when I was 12. My mom was working 2 jobs. She would get up in the morning, get me and my 3 brothers ready for school, drop us off, go to work. She would pick us up after school, take us home, tell us to be good and then go work a second job till 9 at night, all while taking weekend classes at a college. We got boxes of food every couple of weeks from one of the local churches. So we didn't do so bad for food. We didn't really have many toys. We ended up having a more wealthy family give us a big tub of Legos, and that was pretty much it. Couple things stand out for me as best memories. This one summer my brother took the lawn mower and went house to house for a month, looking to mow people's lawns for 10 a pop. He would start out at like 10 a.m. and come home 5 to 6 in the evening. He was 10, mind you. He collected all this money, and, when he had enough, he bought a used N64, with like 2 games. The silly thing was, we didn't have a TV to play it on. My mom was so incredibly proud, she went and worked extra hours and got this super bad cheap 12-inch TV for us to play it on. It was the coolest thing we had until way later. I think it was that same year. My mom was working hard, and I knew she was saving up money for Christmas presents, but my brother got sick in October, and had to go to the doctors. I don't remember what or why he had to go, but my mom was sad a lot. We didn't have health insurance, and what little money we did have was gone. I remember Christmas Day, hearing my mom sobbing in her bedroom, door closed, and us boys just in the living room, playing. The doorbell rang, and my mom told me to get it. It was an old guy who lived down the street from us. He had a box of toys for us. Some old, some new. The look on my mom's face was, I don't have the words. The look on his face as my mom hugged that guy and cried was awesome too. It took my mom almost 10 years to finish her degree while raising us. Her big dream finally got realized, and about 7 years ago she went to work as a music teacher. She bought her own house, new car. I can't tell you how proud of her I was. This last year was the very best for her. She had started doing wonderful things. She had started writing a book about technology in the classroom, had been asked to do a presentation at the National Teacher Conference, and had just finished her master's. It all changed when I received a call. She had been slaughtered.
What did you find while snooping that you wish you had never found? Several years ago my teenage daughter, 13 at the time, had some problems with staying up really late, and then it was almost impossible to get her up in the morning. The major reason being she was on her phone and social media with friends until all hours. I felt it was getting out of hand, so after 11 p.m. she had to hand her phone over to me and I'd give it back to her in the morning. Normally, I'd throw her phone in a drawer and give it back to her the next morning, but for some reason one night I had it on my dresser. Around midnight it started buzzing repeatedly with texts. I got up to put it in the dresser so I wouldn't hear it, but as I looked at the screen I saw a bunch of texts had come in from her older sister who was away at college. My cell was downstairs in my purse and I thought maybe something was wrong and that's why she was repeatedly texting her younger sibling. In any case, I opened the most recent text. It turned out to be a text where she was telling my youngest daughter how much she hated me. I know I should have just shut it down and put it back, but I couldn't believe my eyes and went on to read other texts between them. The texts mainly talked about how upset they were with me and what a bad mom they felt I was. Main reasons were I checked up on their grades when they were in high school and limited cell phone usage. My feelings were so hurt. Initially I didn't say anything to my daughters or husband because I knew I was wrong to have checked her phone. This happened a week or 2 before Mother's Day. In any case, as Mother's Day approached my husband wanted to know what I wanted to do. He was trying to organize something with the girls for me but I kept shutting it down. I felt it would be so hypocritical for us to do something together because my daughters really didn't want to be with me anyways. I was so angry and hurt and I didn't want to say or do anything that might make the situation worse. In any case, I finally told my husband what had happened and why I felt the way I did. We had a huge fight about it and he felt that I had violated their privacy. I admitted to my daughters about what I had done too and expressed my regret about doing it. I told them I was sorry. My oldest proceeded to call me names I'd never heard before and told me about all the ways I had ruined her and her sister's lives. She threatened to tell my friends and coworkers that I was a child abuser. The relationships I had with my daughters and husband were irrevocably changed because of that event. I had always been the prime disciplinarian in our family. My husband always wanted to be the girl's friend. He hated the hard part of parenting. After that I cut back on disciplining my youngest and asked my husband to step up more with things. He resents me for it. It's definitely put a wedge between us. He also put a lock on his cell phone so no one can get into or see his messages but him. My oldest and I have mended fences somewhat, but we really aren't that close. When she needs or wants something she'll reach out to me at times, but her father is usually her preferred first choice. And my youngest, she is emotionally aloof. I constantly tell her how proud I am of her and that I love her, but she rarely if ever responds. It's been almost 5 years since the incident. When my father died last year it was one of the few times she said she loved me. I'm not sure if it was sincere or she just felt she had to say it.
In conclusion, I often wish I had never found those text messages while snooping. I thought we had a strong family that loved each other, but I now realize we only have tolerated each other. Perhaps the old saying ignorance is bliss is true. It certainly would have seemed so in my case. I, 31 mil, took my terminally ill friend's virginity before she passed. Today is her 1-year anniversary since she passed, and I can't stop thinking about her. She was my friend for 6 years. Her cancer came back aggressively. She told us she doesn't want to go through chemo again, so she planned to enjoy the time she had left. Before that, she was also kind of a homebody who was only close to a small group of friends, which was us. One night when we were all drinking, she admitted to me she was still a virgin, but she doesn't want to lose it to just any stranger, at least somebody she trusts before she goes. That person was me. She didn't force me to do anything I didn't want to. She asked but was willing to drop it and pretend it never happened if I decided no. We decided to make it extra special. Got a nice hotel room, got those fake candles all over the room to make it more romantic. Was the first time I ever had sex with someone I loved but wasn't in love with, if that makes sense. It was still a very intense experience. Not in a bad way. There was still lots of emotions. Even though she seemed so happy she got to lose her virginity to someone she trusts, part of me wonders if I did take advantage. If I was wrong for saying yes. It's just hard because I miss her so much. But I'm still glad at least I got to give her something before she left.
What disturbing rumor turned out to be true at your school? When I was a senior in high school, we had a new teacher join the faculty to teach health and home economics. She was probably about 26 years old and very, very attractive. Everyone was talking about the hot new teacher. As I was senior class president, I needed a new faculty advisor since my previous advisor of 3 years retired at the end of my junior year. About 2 weeks later, the principal called me into his office and informed me that the new hot teacher was going to be our new class advisor for the rest of the year. As a result, she and I spent a lot of time together, at school and off campus, organizing and running myriad events to raise money for the class, plan the prom, field trips, etc. Soon, the rumors started flying around that she and I were messing around. This was completely false. I can say she never acted inappropriately towards me or suggested anything to make me think she had plans for any type of physical or sexual activity. She was a fantastic advisor and always just that, a class advisor. I spent the rest of the year denying these rumors with friends, with teachers and with parents. I was even interrogated by my wrestling coach the day before the district championship match. She and I had a laugh about it at graduation, as she had to face similar questions from other faculty as well as the principal. She confided in me that she had tendered her resignation, but the principal would not accept it and said he believed her and would ensure the rumor was squashed. So I graduated and left for my plebe year at West Point, forgetting about the entire situation. At West Point, the first year is called plebe year rather than freshman year. The first semester of my plebe year was moving along as it should, with no unusual events worth mentioning until the final month. Then, in early December, the topic of my high school faculty advisor resurfaced. One night when I was studying, there was a knock on my door and the company tactical officer, a regular Army captain, walked in and told me to report to his office immediately as there was a phone call for me from the Dover Police Department. Now, I immediately assumed it was my brother playing some kind of twisted joke on me, since he was a captain in the very same police department waiting for me on the phone. Since my TAC was standing right behind me, I answered the phone as we were taught. Cadet Kerwick speaking. How may I help you, sir/ma'am? I immediately recognized the voice on the other end. It was not my brother, but a close friend I had grown up with and known for over 15 years. He said,